Hey guys, welcome back to 428 Shibuya Scramble. This is TJ Gamer Girl signing on. So, last episode we finished up Achi's current block and found out that his dad hired the man with the cane to kill Hitomi, because she has the same blood type as Suzune, and to get a heart transplant done on her. There's better ways of doing it, seriously. And we continued Minorikawa, but we ended up getting a bad ending with him that is connected to Osawa. So now we need to start Osawa to fix Minorikawa's end. I don't want to know how people feel. All I want is to know what viruses feel. I prefer viruses, because they make no move to encroach on me from the other side of my microscope. They leave me free to my thoughts until my thoughts wander as I wish. And while it may be true to say I understand viruses, I've never been able to understand my fellow humans. I don't know them. I don't know a single fundamental thing about them. With Tanaka dead, trying to use the backup password for the fingerprint scanner had become a hopeless endeavor. The only remaining means of gaining entry to the storage area was to issue an emergency unlock request to the electronic lock manufacturer. In order to do that, they needed approval from the 6 members of the board of directors. Excuse me. Returning to his study, Osawa called Makino's personal cell phone. "What is it?" Makino said gruffly as soon as he picked up. Osawa informed him of the situation, including Tanaka's death, and the fact that Maria was infected. The news left Makino at a loss for words. "Please," Osawa begged. "You need to hold an emergency board meeting." Makino was silent for a few moments. "I'm afraid I can't do that." "Why not? Are you just going to sit by and let my daughter die?" Osawa raged. "And not just her. If Maria goes symptomatic." That was still only an if, but Osawa was reluctant to put his fears into words. "If she goes symptomatic, the Ua virus will sweep through all of Tokyo." "I realize that," Makino replied. "But one of the board members is overseas on business. Holding a meeting is impossible." Despite the gravity of the situation, he sounded astoundingly nonchalant. Osawa couldn't back down now. "There must be some other option, like a web conference or something." "That doesn't help us if we can't get in touch with him," Makino huffed. "He went missing a few days ago in the middle of his business trip. The head of Okushi Pharmaceuticals' New York branch has been missing since April 25th, 9 p.m. local time. There have been no demands for a ransom." "Oh, lovely." Lovely. Osawa was almost too appalled to be angry. "That's the most ridiculous lie I've ever heard. Would you like to speak to my on-site contact if you don't believe me? This was like arguing with a child. If Makino was deliberately working against him, he'd never know if this disappearance was real or not. In that case, can you please appoint a representative in his stead?" Osawa pleaded. "Selecting a representative is a complicated process. Even if it started right now, it would take until sometime tomorrow afternoon to complete." "Tomorrow afternoon? By then it would be too late for any of this to matter." "Sir, can't you see how absurd the things you're saying are?" "What would you have me do?" Makino barked. "These are the realities of corporate politics." "I understand, sir. You'll do nothing for my daughter. That's what you're saying." "That's not what I'm saying," Makino replied. "Look, I'll see what I can do to appoint a representative more quickly." He hung up. His tone had suggested that waiting for an appointee wouldn't be a terribly hopeful prospect. I have no more allies, Osawa thought. All I have now are foes. And that's how we get the bad ending for Mino Dikawa. So, still, he'd just have to take Makino at his word. Right now, that was his only course of action. Osawa sat down in front of his computer and quietly closed his eyes. If only I could just go to sleep and wake up tomorrow morning and find all of this resolved. All I'm asking for is a miracle. But he knew reality would never be so kind. He could hold his eyes shut as long as he wanted, and it wouldn't make this hopeless situation go away. He felt the anxiety welling up inside him, till it seemed like he was going to explode. Needing a distraction from his helplessness, Osawa opened up Ayanet. He knew this was mere escapism, but he couldn't just sit and do nothing while waiting for Makino to call back. He posted a new topic with the title Aya Fortune Teller. I tried the Aya Fortune Teller. My results basically said I was a bad person who can't connect to the people around me. And you know what? That's exactly right. I'm only interested in my own little world. That's probably why my wife and my assistant at work got so fed up with me. It's the same with my 2 daughters. What sort of things are they interested in? Do they have a lot of friends? What are their aspirations for the future? I don't know any of those things. It never even occurred to me to find out. I'm such a terrible father. Also, a finger ceased their tapping on the keyboard as he thought back to when Maria and Hitomi were younger. Daddy! The 2 girls would follow him around like a pair of puppies. Their father was their everything. That much was clear just by looking at their faces. He'd felt a ticklish giddiness at having his girls cling to him so. He'd never felt anything like it in his life. But there were times where he also found it tiresome. I'm sick of being the person I am. There's nothing I can do about that, though I'm sure it's far too late for me to change. He poured out all of his negative emotions into his post. It felt like a stream of consciousness drivel, but he didn't hesitate to write it all down, all the same. He wanted other people to know what a miserable excuse for a human being he was. At last, when he couldn't think of anything else to add, he posted his bitter confession to the forum. He was staring numbly at the monitor when he heard a furious shout from the next room. You've got to be kidding me! It was Kajiwara, and Osawa had never heard him so angry. Osawa headed into the living room and found Kajiwara embroiled in a vehement argument with the other detectives. I don't care what HQ's policy is. I will not just quietly go along with this. Kajiwara had already screamed himself red in the face. Looks like Kano's not the only one that's upset by what Kuze said. You're out of line, snapped one MPD detective. Kichi Sawatari, with the Metropolitan Police Department's first criminal investigation section. Having heard of Kajiwara's past deeds from friends at the Shibuya precinct, he recommended to his boss that Kajiwara be assigned to the investigation at the Osawa residence. After seeing the detective's interaction with Osawa, he is confident that his recommendation was in the right. However, given the circumstances, he can't help but take a cold stance towards Kajiwara. Hold your tongue. I don't care if I'm out of line. You may have talent. I'll give you that, the other detective said. But you're a precinct detective, and this isn't your jurisdiction. It's not your place to question orders from higher up. Wait. Osawa thought, Kajiwara really is a real detective after... That's... That's what you're surprised about? The fact that Kajiwara is actually a detective? Go on. Explain the situation to Mr. Osawa. Kajiwara bit his lip in frustration at the other detective's order. Very well, he said. But before he could say more, Osawa noticed that the police equipment had all been cleared off the table. Hold on, Osawa said. What's going on? Has something happened? Allow me to explain, sir, Kajiwara said. His bitterness showed plainly on his face. We've been recalled, sir. MPD has established a security force headed by members of its Public Security Bureau to deal with the bioterrorist threat. Because the kidnapping task force has not yet found Maria, and she's infected with the virus, the task force personnel have instead been absorbed into the security force and will continue their work under its direction. Osawa narrowed his eyes, fighting to keep the confusion from his face. What do you mean by that? He was shaking, terrified to have his suspicions confirmed. I'm truly sorry, sir, for having been unable to help you. Kajiwara gave a deep and solemn bow. But, Maria? What's going to happen to Maria? Another unit has been tasked with bringing your daughter into custody, sir. That much, at least, Osawa could process. You're going to place her under quarantine, aren't you? Kajiwara's lips stiffened, but he nodded. In order to minimize the spread of the virus, so I'm told. No! Osawa cried. You can't do that! If you do, there won't be any way to save her! His head spun. Please, I beg of you. You need to get Maria to me. I might be able to save her. When Kajiwara didn't respond, he turned to the other detectives. Please, don't. You can't place Maria under quarantine. But the detectives' only answer was to avert their eyes. Why are you all ignoring me? Please, you have to listen. If you bring her to me, I can figure something out. I know I can. He plunked himself down on the floor, yelling and flailing his arms like a child throwing a tantrum. The detectives exchanged sullen looks with one another, and then walked off and left him there. He knew he must be a sorry sight, but nevertheless he kept shouting after them. Please, don't stand by and let my daughter die. Only Kajiwara remained with him in the living room. I'm sorry, sir. This was beyond my ability to stop. He gave another apologetic bow. Osawa felt suddenly deflated. No. You've done a fine job, Detective Kajiwara. It's me who should be sorry. I've made such a disgraceful display of myself. That's not true, sir. In fact, I'm deeply moved. I can tell how much Maria must mean to you. Osawa shook his head. If I'd really been thinking about Maria, I would have made an effort to work with you detectives more. That was all just self-absorbed shouting. A moment of emotional selfishness. And yet, as a result, you convinced me to stay here with you. Kajiwara proceeded to pull out his phone and put in a request with the task force headquarters to remain at the Osawa residence. He got into a heated spat with his commanding officer, but ultimately received permission to stay on as the police liaison with Osawa. Well, the detective said when he hung up, you see, there are some people who are legitimately moved by a parental display of emotion. Even if I'm not certain that I can do very much in staying here with you. That's not true, Osawa replied. There's plenty you can help me with. He looked into Kajiwara's face and smiled. For instance, I can have a banana whenever I want. You find things that have gone missing. That fried egg on rice you made me was delicious. Kajiwara let out a bright little laugh. Oh, that's so nice of you to say. You flatter me. It's not flattery. Osawa shook his head seriously. Honestly, I've got a hankering for more. I wish I had your cooking skills, detective. But despite the praise, Kajiwara's smile took on a note of sadness. Oh, no, anyone could make something like that after living alone like I have. Also, I was surprised to hear that he lived alone. The detective looked like he was old enough to likely be married by now. Doing this job caused me to neglect my family. Finally, about 2 years ago, my wife hit me with the divorce paperwork. I wanted to be able to keep our daughter with me, but... well, the law tends to favor the mother when it comes to custody issues. So his living alone was a newer thing, after being separated from his wife and daughter. That fried egg on rice? My daughter used to love that. Is that so? I could cook more proper dishes, but for whatever reason, she just really loved that one. The detective then pulled 2 bars of chocolate from his pocket. Also, I accepted one, but said nothing. My daughter was fond of this brand of chocolate, too. Kajiwara snapped off a bit of his own bar and popped it into his mouth. I would warn her that she'd get cavities if she ate too much, but she'd stuff her face to the point that there was practically always chocolate smeared around her mouth. Kajiwara sighed, and a forlorn smile came to his face. I guess the fact that I always carry stuff like this around in my pockets just means that I'm a fool who doesn't know how to let go. Osawa shook his head. I don't think that's true at all. He understood full well what it was like to have a daughter always in one's thoughts. Osawa too broke off a piece of chocolate and slipped it into his mouth. It was sweet and milky, a taste a child would love. He licked the residual chocolate from his fingertips, then turned back to Kajiwara. The 2 men smiled at one another. This is such a sweet moment. Here was a man Osawa could really talk to. He was sure of that much now. Yeah, and you couldn't stand him earlier. Detective, I apologize. I've kept things from you because I was worried that they involved classified corporate information. Oh? Kajiwara's eyes glimmered with interest. Earlier today, I received some emails. They could be pertinent to the case. Would you mind letting me see them? Osawa shook his head. On the contrary. Back in front of his computer, Osawa saw that IANet was still open. Pretty Honey had responded to his forum post. No, read this. You need to read this. One moment, just let me read this. Also, I read the response. I got that same result. Do you really think it's too late? Don't give up hope. Hang in there. It's never too late. Every family has its share of problems. And now that I know that Pretty Honey is Shizuo, it's one father who involved himself so much in his work, speaking to another father who's involved so much into his work. Like, you'll never find one that doesn't, I'm sure. When it comes to family, there's no such thing as game over. So don't let it get you down, Julie. Besides, I dared learn one thing from reading your post. In the end, a father's happiness is his daughter's happiness. Kajiwara peered into the monitor. A young girl is posting to a forum for people 40 and older. It's Pretty Honey. She always replies to my threads. The detective furrowed his brow. I see. Is something the matter? Nope. That last line there just has me curious, is all. A young girl writing something like that. Well, that's neither here nor there right now. Let me see those emails if you would. Osawa opened his emails. He pulled up the images of the human testing on the monitor. What is this? Kajiwara stared at the monitor as if unable to look away. These are images from unauthorized clinical testing of an antiviral drug I developed, carried out by my company without my knowledge. Images of a... I'm sorry, what is that? The detective frowned at the unfamiliar terminology. In simple terms, the antiviral is a wonder drug to combat the Ua virus. Hold on. Maria is infected with the Ua virus, isn't that right? Yes. Ua is a species of virus discovered in South Africa relatively recently. Roughly 12 hours after infection, patients develop a cough, then a fever, then begin vomiting, and ultimately begin to bleed uncontrollably from all over, resulting in death. The mortality rate is... Osawa was reluctant to say it. Kajiwara held his breath, waiting. It's nearly 100%. Kajiwara shuddered. But wait, he said after a moment. If you have this wonder drug, then Maria... Osawa shook his head. Without Tanaka, I have no means of getting it out of the lab. Kajiwara's frown deepened. I see. It might not be much to go on, but I think we can put together at least one piece of our little mystery here. Pardon me one moment. Kajiwara inspected the email address of the sender A, then brought up the mail header. You don't see email addresses like this much. It's seemingly from a foreign country, but that may be fake. You can tell that just from the email. The detective flashed a little grin. Take a look here. So if we just do this, and then this... His fingers flew over the keyboard, calling up the header and details, singling out the received from field. This set of four numbers at the bottom is the sender's IP address. Think of it as an ordinarily hidden location marker of sorts. As he spoke, the detective pulled out a website called IP Station. He copied and pasted a set of four numbers and pressed the enter key. The monitor showed the name of the provider, connection method, and other such details. Basically, like, for Americans, Comcast, Spectrum, Infinity, or Xfinity. Is it Xfinity or Infinity? Unless Xfinity is just a Comcast thing. But it's stuff like that. It's how you get your internet. It's the people you get your internet from. Also, I couldn't make heads or tails of most of it, but one thing drew his eye. Access point, Shibuya Ward, Tokyo. Kajiwara went into the email program's options and checked the server info for Osawa's connection. Deep furrows formed in his forehead. This is the same provider that you use, Mr. Osawa. What does that mean? What kind of internet connection do you have here at your house? What sort? It's plugged in over there, but... Osawa pointed at the router. And does everyone in your family use that same line? Yeah, I think so. Kajiwara opened the command prompt, then typed ipconfig, a literal prompt for users to issue computer control commands via keyboard instead of a mouse. Also frequently used to refer to the window or programming allowing for such. Okay, so... the same numbers we saw before pop up here. That's a bad sign. Oh? Osawa stared at the monitor. Kajiwara pressed enter, and a black window covered in white alphanumeric characters appeared. What the heck? Kajiwara muttered under his breath. Wait, what's going on? Osawa asked. Explain simply so that I can understand. Faking an email address is simple enough, but the typical person wouldn't be able to fake an IP. It's very likely that these emails were sent from another computer inside this house. Osawa had to stifle a gasp. The emails had been sent from his own house at around 11 o'clock that morning. Since Osawa hadn't sent them himself, that left only one possible culprit. Suddenly his phone rang, nearly startling him out of his seat. Makino's name showed up on the incoming call display. Osawa quickly picked up. Is there an update on the emergency board meeting? He blurted. Makino's voice was quiet and subdued. I tried pulling whatever strings I could, but to no avail. I'm afraid holding a board meeting today just won't be possible. The phone fell from Osawa's hand. His only possible means of saving Maria was now gone. Hey, to be continued. Wow. I did not expect to complete Osawa's block in one video. Again, I was expecting a video and a half at least. Well, thanks to what I did, Minorikawa's bad end is gone. I have to restart at the same place. Yeah, is it fun? Yeah, fun. Dumbass. I see. Quit the stick. Find something better. One hit should do it. Yeah, I think I have the thing. Throw the piece on. Don't go anywhere. Yeah, sure. Dumbass. Kimizuka. Need a ride. Publishing office, 10 minutes. Explosion. All the roads are blocked. There wasn't when it happened. Glad to see you're not hurt. I'm aware. There was a man in there. Any rumors? Taxi driver's here in a bit. You look tired. Guess so. This is the third time I've been through this scene because it's always ended in a bad. It's ended in a bad end twice. The taxi stopped outside of Heaven Publishing. The trip had taken 10 minutes on the dot. Thanks. Minorikawa left a 1,000 yen bill on the seat and exited the cab. Sir! The driver called after him. Minorikawa turned back around. Kimizuka was leaning out the window to point at him. It isn't called work because it's fun, sir. The day will be over soon enough. Just hang in there a little bit longer. The driver finished with a knowing grin. Minorikawa cracked a ghost of a smile. Maybe his spirits had been lifted just a tiny little bit. Thank you, he replied. You're a true friend of the working man. He waved half-heartedly, then headed into the building. Mr. Mino! Chiaki threw herself at him as soon as he opened the door to the editing office. News of the explosion was playing on the television. Minorikawa marched straight to his desk and opened up his laptop. While it booted, he tried to get a handle on the current situation. Where are the folks from the loan company? He asked. They're here, Chiaki said. I have them waiting downstairs. Do they know Toyama's dead? I'm sorry. I kind of let that slip. What about Hana? I'm not sure. I haven't heard from her since she called earlier. With a tiny sigh, Minorikawa started typing at his laptop. By some miracle, his 6 pages of the copy were nearly wrapped up. Still, he needed to do whatever it took to see this job through to the end. That would serve as his final tribute to Toyama's memory. He loaded his copy into the DTP software in order to set the layout. Bit by bit, actual magazine articles began to take shape. Then the editing department door swung open. Hey! Snarled the young man who barged in first. He kicked over a stack of books. How long are you gonna keep us waiting, huh? Oh, not you two again. Couldn't your boss have come here and gotten his own hands dirty? Sheesh. I'm honestly sick of looking at your faces. Honestly, Segawa. Must you be so rowdy? A middle-aged man stepped in alongside him. Are you Mr. Minorikawa then? He added as his eyes fixed on the journalist. He held out his business card. A pleasure to meet you. I am Asao Ozu from Takarada Financing. And finally, we got names. Sawada and Asao. I don't remember they said their names before now. But we finally have names if they didn't. Black market lending firm that offers loans at an interest rate above what the law allows. Basically, a loan shark. Well known for taking whatever steps necessary to collect what's owed. Its business card slogan. It still sounded like Snogan. Got bad credit, but you need a loan? Call anytime. We'll put together a loan that suits your needs, and then possibly kill you to get it. My deepest sympathies about Mr. Toyama. However, I'm afraid that we do need you to give back the money we loaned. Despite his polite tone, the threat in his voice was plain. Look, next month's issue of 4-Star General Gossip is definitely coming out. Couldn't you please wait for repayment until we have the funds from those sales? Minorikawa asked. That was exactly what Toyama's plan had been, after all. Well, we certainly aren't monsters. If the magazine is going to be making you money, we wouldn't mind delaying another month. You really mean it? Chaki chirped. To clarify, that would be the case, if Toyama was still alive. Releasing the next issue is all well and good, but with Toyama gone, so too is the company. That will make full repayment of what we're owed impossible, I expect. Then what do you want us to do? Minorikawa asked coldly. How about we just cut to the chase, growled the younger man Segawa. Dig out your ears and listen up. Chaki recoiled in panic, and Minorikawa held up an interposing hand. Knock it off, he said. You're scaring the young lady. A thin smile came to Osu's face. All we want to know is where Mr. Toyama's daughter is. Yeah, that's right, Segawa said. Tell us where the girl is. No way, Chaki squeaked in protest. Hana's just a little kid. She doesn't have any responsibility to pay back the... Ozu didn't let her finish. We're aware of that. Nevertheless, we'd still like to know where she is. The law didn't matter right now. Guys like this had all sorts of ways of raining money out of people. It was clear from the looks on their faces that Ozu and Segawa had some wicked scheme up their sleeves. Unless, of course, you would prefer to take on Toyama's debts, Mr. Minorikawa. You're quite the accomplished reporter, after all. Take on his debts, huh? Minorikawa didn't know how much Toyama had borrowed, but it only took one look at these guys to tell him it was no small sum. How about it? Ozu asked. The way you land scoop after scoop, I'm sure you'll be able to repay us in full before you die. Minorikawa fiercely returned his stare. I'll consider it. Could you give me some time? Chaki went pale at Minorikawa's response. No! How can you even think about taking their offer? She cried. Segawa stepped in, drowning her out. No way! We've waited long enough. Give us your answer now. Yes or no? What's it gonna be? Now, let's just calm down, Ozu chided. He said that he'd consider it. That's a step in the right direction. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Minorikawa? Yeah, sure. Then I suppose we can wait at least a little while longer. Minorikawa had hoped to put them off for several days at least, but it didn't look like that was going to happen. The two men from Takarada Financing plunked themselves down on the editing department sofa. Get your foot off that chair! What are you, 10? Or an ill-mannered... whatever? I couldn't come up with something. I was going to say ill-mannered ape, but that'd be an insult to the ape. And I love animals. I don't want to insult the ape. See, even your buddy has enough manners to know you shouldn't put your feet up on furniture that it doesn't belong on. Especially with your shoes still on. You've been running around this whole time. There's probably a lot of dirt and dust and grime on that shoe. That's disgusting. Mr. Mino, you're not actually going to take on that debt, are you? Chiaki asked quietly. Minorikawa sat at his desk looking over the copy he'd written. That's none of your concern, he said. What I need to know is, how's your piece on those street interviews coming? But, those guys, they said it doesn't matter if the issue comes out or not. Don't be ridiculous. When a professional agrees to take on a job, they see it through to the end. Chiaki took his point and scampered to grab the printout of her copy. Minorikawa gave it a quick once-over. He saw immediately that the piece was lacking in structure. He then read the article a second time, checking the finer details. Several off-theme sentences jumped out at him. This is no good. Rewrite it. He thrust the printout back at Chiaki. Yes, sir. She bowed her head and retreated to another desk. The TV was still on. A news broadcaster's voice suddenly broke through the silence, as well as Minorikawa's concentration. We're live on the scene now, where an explosion in Shibuya has... Minorikawa gazed blankly at the screen. He found his mind drifting to a particular memory of Toyama. The door looked like it might fall apart at any moment, but Minorikawa didn't care. He pounded on it as hard as he could. The Toyama nameplate popped off and fell to the floor. It was hard to believe this dilapidated apartment was the home of a newspaper editor who worked his way up from the reporter. Hey, Toyama! Get your ass out here! At the sound of Minorikawa's angry shouting, other tenants on the floor poked their heads out of the room just to stare. He paid them no heed, continuing to call out. Eventually, Toyama opened the door, dressed in his sweats and undershirt. Quiet down, you moron, he snapped. Come on in. I hear you tendered your letter of resignation at the paper. Minorikawa sat cross-legged on the tatami-covered floor. Tell me why! Toyama quirked a lopsided grin. You want to know why I quit, huh? Alright, lean in close. Minorikawa peered at him dubiously. Why? I don't want anyone overhearing this. Resigned, Minorikawa leaned forward and turned his right ear toward Toyama. The man's warm breath against his cheek was pretty unsettling. At first he had trouble concentrating on Toyama's story, but when the older man got to the crux of the matter, he found himself listening with rapt attention. By the time Toyama finished, Minorikawa was unable to suppress a shock. You're starting your own publishing company? Not so loud, damn it! Toyama shushed him with a finger onto his lips. He looked around warily, as if there might be spies in his own apartment. Right, but... a publishing company? Minorikawa said again, more quietly this time. What are you going to do for your distributor account? All booksellers were required to use a wholesale distributor to circulate their publications. To do business with such a distributor, a publisher needs a specialized distributor account. They're not going to let a company with no track record open a new account with a distributor. I'm sure you must realize that. Toyama grinned, a proud gleam in his eyes. I know. That's why I bought one. You bought one? A ghost account, belonging to a publisher that went bankrupt. Distributor accounts could go for tens of millions of yen. There was no way Toyama could afford that on his severance pay alone. He must have taken out a loan in order to make the purchase. But the publishing industry was in a slump nowadays. People just weren't buying books much anymore. Starting up a new publishing company was a beyond risky endeavor. And I've already decided on a name for my company, Minorikawa. Toyama's face was positively beaming. Get this. Heaven Publishing. Heaven? That sounds... fatalistic. The idea is that the people who work for me will feel like they're in paradise. For all his kvetching about keeping quiet, Toyama was now exclaiming pretty loudly himself. I mean, I can appreciate your willingness to take the risk, but surely your wife must have had objections, Minorikawa said. Toyama fell silent. He went and opened up the refrigerator. Minorikawa took a peek inside. Its shelves were mournfully sparse, holding little besides beer cans and drinking snacks. The missus left me. Took our daughter with her. Those scant few words painted the picture clearly enough. Toyama grabbed a can of beer and tossed it to his guest. But no more sob stories, he went on. He briskly cracked open his own can of beer. Weak foam bubbled from the top. Cheers, Minorikawa, to Heaven Publishing's big debut. He'd cast everything aside and was driving for a new beginning. If the man had braced himself for the challenge, it wasn't Minorikawa's place to tell him he was making a mistake. Even if it was an uphill battle, he had little chance of winning. Congratulations, Mr. Toyama. Minorikawa pulled the tap on his beer can. Cheers! The two of them clacked their cans together. 1 year had passed since Toyama founded Heaven Publishing. Minorikawa poked his head into the editing office, a bag from the convenience store in hand. Hey boss, how's business? How does it look like it's doing? Toyama said amidst a veritable mountain of returned stock, his expression bleak. Take them on consignment. This allows them to return that don't sell. Wow. The books were all bulky, non-fiction tomes, not exactly the sort to fly off the shelves. The man couldn't even muster a smile for the reunion. It's been like this for every non-fiction book we've put out. Wow. Starting right off with the bleak stuff, huh? 'Cause things are bleak. The only thing that's selling is our gossip rag. Is this gossip rag of ours. Minorikawa pulled some beer cans from his bag, handing one to Toyama. Toyama lifted an issue of 4-Star General Gossip from atop his desk. It was Heaven Publishing's one breadwinner, the only thing keeping the company afloat. But the gossip now seemed like it was buried in the red of the publisher's nonfiction releases. I really did have higher aspirations than this, Toyama sighed, gazing in disappointment at the piles of unsold books. But here we are, with our gossip magazine as our only viable publication. The beleaguered bookseller chugged his beer. Daddy, I'm hungry. Minorikawa was startled to hear a young child's voice. He turned around to see a little girl nestled between the stacks of returned stock. That's my daughter, Hana, Toyama said. It's complicated, but she's living with me now. I see. Minorikawa couldn't press for more details with Hana right there. In all likelihood, things with Toyama's ex-wife hadn't been going so well. Go on, introduce yourself, Toyama said. This is one of Daddy's work friends. Hana turned to Minorikawa with a bright little grin. Hello, my name's Hana. I'm 6. You want some of this? Minorikawa held out a packet of dried squid he'd bought to go with the beers. Sure. Hana greedily stuffed her cheeks with the squid. Toyama flashed a sheepish grin. Do you like living with your daddy, Hana? Minorikawa asked, giving the girl's hair a gentle ruffle. Uh-huh, I do. My daddy's amazing. Boy, did that change in a few years. He runs a company. Toyama let out a tiny, involuntary sob at his daughter's ready praise. I'll keep at it, Toyama said, looking into his daughter's smiling face. Hana is more important to me than any high aspirations I might have had. I'll keep shoveling up copies of the gossip, and at least make sure she's always got something good to eat. Daddy, this is really tasty! Hana held up the pouch of dried squid. Tears welled in Toyama's eyes. Next time, I'll make sure she has some sashimi instead of something like this. Hey, what do you mean something like this? Minorikawa grumbled. I'm the one who bought it. Toyama and his daughter laughed together. It was a heartwarming sight. Minorikawa thought, a father and his girl getting along so well. Toyama might have been a hard-hitting journalist, but when he came home at the end of the day, he was just daddy. It was only natural for the man as a father to put his child above everything else. After gorging herself on snacks, Hana fell asleep on the sofa, looking well and truly satisfied. You know, Minorukawa, Hana's happiness means more to me than my lofty artistic ideals ever could. Toyama kept his voice low as he regarded his daughter's sleeping face. And from that day forward, Heaven Publishing had shifted its focus to scandal racks, with 4-star general gossip as its pillar. Had that been for good, or for ill? Whatever the case, Toyama had abandoned his pride. Minorukawa had watched him become more and more of a miserable wretch. Minorukawa snapped back into the present as a sheaf of papers appeared in front of his face. "Here you go," Chaki said, radiating anxiety. "Right." Minorukawa gave her copy a close read-over, then thrust it back out to her. "What did you even fix?" he asked. Could you please tell me what parts are wrong?" she mumbled, hanging her head. "What are you talking about?" "It's just, well, we don't have a lot of time here. So I figured if I just fix the parts that need fixing." Chagi trailed off into an indistinct mutter. "Is that always how you go about fixing your copy?" Yes." "Then you're never going to get any better. If someone tells you it's no good, you rewrite the whole thing from scratch. Just making fiddly tweaks here and there is what an amateur does." Chaki dipped her head even deeper, cringing at the reprimand. Minorukawa let out a tiny sigh. "Look, what I just told you, that's what Toyama told me when I was first starting out. There were times he'd have me do dozens of rewrites. At first I thought he was just pushing me around, but after rewriting things over and over, I realized something. There are a whole lot of ways you can write about the same thing. And that's what helped me hone my skills as a writer." Chaki raised her head back up. "Wow. Really? If you can get that, then stick with it. Write your submission deadline as close as you have to, in order to write the best piece you can." "Okay, I can do it. I will do it." Finally, Chaki's face brightened with a smile. "That's the spirit." The woman might have talent, but she hadn't realized it yet. She needed to be able to stick to an assignment, even when things get tough. If she didn't have that kind of resolve, she'd never make it as a freelancer. "Oh, how touching. Shut up, you jackass." Ozu chimed in, applauding. "I'm almost moved to tears. They'll make a movie of this for sure. See, we had only been acquainted with that sad sap Toyama. We never knew there was such an upstanding fellow here who was so good at tough love." Minorukawa shot to his feet and pounded his fist on the desk. "That's about enough from the peanut gallery." "Hold your tongue," Seigo snarled. His eyes shone with a vicious gleam. "We're getting sick of waiting here." "Seigo, you really are a short-tempered guy, aren't you?" Ozu chuckled disapprovingly at his underling, then slid a sheet of paper into Minorukawa's desk. "Nevertheless, I'm afraid we do require a decision now. If you'll just stamp here, we'll be on our way." Chaki stared then at the document. "Is this a bond of reconnaissance?" "Yep, that's right. That's what you write when transferring a debt." Seigo puffed himself up proudly. Minorukawa silently looked over the contract. "If you don't have a stamp, we'll gladly accept a signature as well," Ozu pointed out. "Face it, pal," Seigo added. "If you don't hurry up and sign, we're never gonna stop going after Toyama's daughter." Minorukawa snatched up a pen. "Mr. Mino, you can't do this! Think about what you're doing!" Chaki shouted. "If you go through with this, you'll just wind up like Mr. Toyama." "I won't." "Yes, you will!" "Just who the hell do you think I am? I'm Minorukawa, damn it! I'm going to land so many scoops it will make your head spin. And I'm going to pay back this debt and rebuild Heaven Publishing." "But why would you take such a risk?" Chaki sobbed. Minorukawa lowered his voice. "Because I owe him so much. I can't stand by and let these scumbags kill his daughter." "Aha!" Before Minorukawa could sign, Seigo startled him with a sudden exclamation. "Oh shit!" Looking up, Minorukawa saw what the loan sharks had seen. Little Hana standing by the door. "Get her! On her, boss!" Ozu and Seigo rushed at the girl. Run! Minorikawa shouted. Hana bolted right for the door, but Ozu managed to snatch her up just as she reached the stairs. Let's be on our way, shall we? A vile grin came to Ozu's cruel face as he headed down the stairwell. Stop! Let her go! Minorikawa rushed after them, trying to grab the girl, but Segawa drove a punch right into his face. Ouchie. Ugh. The pain staggered him. Nevertheless, he managed to press on. Get your hands off of that girl. Ooh! A leaping kick right to the face. Shut your damn mouth. Something hard slammed into his chest. Oh, I thought it was the face. His vision went dark. He felt himself slipping from consciousness. Just before he blacked out, he heard Hana's voice. I'm sorry, Uncle Minorikawa. Sorry? No, I'm the one who should apologize. But before his thoughts got any further, Minorikawa passed out. Bad end? Another freaking bad end! It turns out Hana had been at the police station just before this, trying to decide if she should tell the police her father had been killed in the explosion. Ah, so we need to do Kano to fix this bad ending. Jesus Christ. Poor Minorikawa. He's getting all love today. Actually, just in this entire time block, he's gotten 3 bad endings. Alright. We'll start up Kano's in the next episode. Till then, this is the Gamer Girl, signing off.